Last summer, I embarked on a camping trip with my faithful companion, Emily, in a remote national park few miles from my home. It was meant to be a bonding experience in the nature, but what we encountered on the trail would test our courage and resilience in a way I never imagined. The day began with clear skies and a sense of adventure in the air. I packed our gear carefully, a sturdy tent, sleeping bags, food for both of us, and essential for hiking. Emily, my energetic Labrador, wagged her tail enthusiastically, as if her sensed the upcoming adventure. So we started our journey. The drive was uneventful. Emily and I sat on our seats, listening to music and podcasts. Then we arrived at the trailhead early in the morning. The park was serene and teeming with life. Birds chirped overhead, and the scent of pine filled the crisp mountain air. Emily pounded ahead on her leash, her nose eagerly sniffing every bush and tree along the trail. The path wound through dense forests and rocky outcrops, offering a glimpse of breathtaking visuals and babbling brooks. Emily trotted beside me, occasionally stopping to investigate interesting scents or chase after a small animal that darted across our path. As we hiked deeper into the wilderness, the sound of civilization faded away, replaced by the smoothing symphony of nature, rustling leaves, distant call of wildlife, and the rush of a nearby stream. It was a perfect day for hiking, and I relished every moment spent exploring the untamed beauty around us. By mid afternoon, we had covered several miles and were nearing the destined campsite, where we planned to spend the night. The trail narrowed and climbed steadily uphill, testing our endurance but rewarding with us a panoramic view of surrounding mountains. As we rounded a bend in the trail, I noticed a peculiar sensation, a prickling at the back of my neck, as we were being watched. Emily, usually exuberant and curious, suddenly grew tense and began growling softly, her hackles raised. I scanned the wood around us, half expecting to see another hiker, perhaps a curious deer. But the forest was quiet, almost unnaturally. The hairs on back of my neck stood on end as an unsettling feeling settled over me. Emily pulled on her leash, straining toward a cluster of thick bushes beside the trail. Her growl grew louder, more urgent, as if her sensed something lurking just out of sight. I gripped her leash tightly, my heart racing with a mixture of fear and curiosity. Suddenly, a low, guttural growl echoed through the entire tree line. It was unlike any sound I ever heard before, deep, menacing, and filled with primal aggression. Emily barked loudly. Her protective instincts kicked into overdrive. My hand trembled as I reached for the flashlight clipped to my belt. With shaking hands, I flicked it on and aimed the beam toward the source of the growl. What I saw in there made my blood run cold. Emerging from the shadows was a creature unlike anything I had ever encountered before. It stood on its two behind legs like a man, but its body was covered in coarse fur, and its eyes glowed with an unnatural amber light. Its long limbs ended in a sharp claws that dug into the earth with each step. Emily lunged forward, barking ferociously at the creature. It responded with a primal roar that echoed through the entire forest. Shaking me to my core, I stumbled backward, heart pounding, struggling to comprehend the reality of what stood before us. In a split second decision, fueled by adrenaline, I unclipped Emily's leash, shouted for her to run. Hesitated for a moment, eyes locked on the creature before bolting down the trail towards safety. I turned and ran after her, my mind racing with fear and panic. Behind me, I could hear the creature crashing through the underbrush in the pursuit. Its heavy footsteps echoed through the woods, growing louder with each passing second. I pushed myself to run faster, branches whipping against my arms and legs as I navigated the harsh terrain. Emily's bark echoed ahead of me, guiding my frantic flight toward the safety of the campsite. The adrenaline coursing through my veins fueled my desperate sprint, but the creature's relentless pursuit kept me on the edge, my fear driving me forward with a primal instinct to survive. As I burst into the clearing of the campsite, relief washed over me like a wave. Emily was already there, panting heavily but unharmed. I collapsed beside her, gasping for breath, tears of fear and relief streaming down my cheeks. The campsite offered a small, safety feeling from the terror of the trail. I quickly set up the tent, building a fire, huddled close to Emily for comfort. The sound of the forest were no longer a smoothing symphony. It filled with dread and fear. Every rustle of the leaves, every snap of a twig sent my heart racing anew. We spent a restless night by the fire, listening for any signs of the creature's return. Emily remained vigilant, her ears perked and her senses on high alert. But thankfully, the night passed without further incidents, and the first light of dawn brought a sense of safety. As morning broke over the campsite, I packed up our gear with trembling hands. The memories of our encounter with the unknown creature haunted me, leaving me shaken and weary of the wilderness that had once been source of joy and happiness. As we hiked back toward the trailhead, I couldn't shake the feeling that we had stumbled into something beyond our understanding. A creature of legend or myth lurking in the shadows of the national park. The experience had changed me, leaving me with a newfound respect for the untamed wild and lingering fear of the unknown. So, if you ever find yourself hiking or camping in a remote wilderness with your faithful companion or solo, be mindful of the danger that lurk beyond the familiar trail. Nature is beautiful and awe-inspiring, but it can also be unforgiving and harboring secrets that defy explanation. And remember, sometimes it's not just the wildlife you need to watch out for. There are forces in the wilderness that remain unseen, waiting for unwitting travelers to cross their path. So be careful out there. The desert stretched out endlessly before me, a vast expanse of sand and stone under the merciless sun. I had come here seeking solitude, a chance to escape the noise and chaos of the city life. Little did I know the desert held secrets far older and darker than I could have imagined. This happened to me few years back. The decision to go on this journey came after a tired and boring month at work. I needed a break, a chance to rest my mind and reconnect with the nature. The southwest seemed like a perfect destination. Its wild beauty and rugged terrain promised a stark contrast to the urban jungle I was used to. Armed with a backpack filled with the essentials, a tent, and a map of the remoter desert trails, I set out from my rented cabin on the outskirts of small Arizona town. The sun was just beginning to rise over the horizon, casting a golden hue across the landscape as I drove deeper into the desert. The road eventually gave way to a dusty trail that wound through the rocky hills and scrubby old trees. I parked my car at the trailhead marked with a weather beaten sign, the only indication that humans had ventured this far into the wilderness. I shouldered my backpack and set off on foot, following the trail as it meandered through the narrow canyons and across dry creek beds. The silence was palpable, broken only by the occasional call of a distant bird or the whisper of the wind through the spare vegetation. Hours passed in solitude as I hiked deeper into the desert, the sun climbing higher in the sky with each step. The heat was oppressive, but I welcomed the physical exertion. It helped clear my mind of the stress and worries that had plagued me in the recent weeks. As midday approached, I found a shaded alcove beneath an overhanging rock to rest and eat a small lunch that I already packed in my backpack. The coolness of the shadow was a welcoming relief from the sun, and I took the opportunity to consult my map and plan the rest of my route. According to the map, there was a secluded canyon not far from my current location, a place known for its ancient secrets and rumored to be haunted by spirits of the past. Intrigued by the prospect of exploring such a historic site, I decided to alter my course slightly and make way toward the canyon. The trail to the canyon was rough and overgrown, evidence that few travelers venture this way. But the promise of discovering something ancient and mysterious drove me forward, my curiosity outweighing any apprehension I felt about exploring such a remote area alone. As I descended to the canyon, the temperature dropped noticeably, the rocks walls casting deep shadows that seemed to swallow the sunlight. The air was thick with the scent of sagebrush and juniper, mingling with the faint aroma of dust and ancient stone. I followed the trail deeper into the canyon, the walls narrowing until they loomed overhead like ancient sentinels. Occasional glimpses of drawings on the canyon wall, ancient artwork left behind by the indigenous people who once called this land home. Each image told a story of hunting, spiritual rituals, and the cycle of nature, life, and death. As I rounded a bend in the trail, the canyon opened up into a small clearing dotted with weathered boulders and twisted juniper trees. In the center of the clearing stood a cluster of rock formations, natural pillars that rose from the desert floor, looked like the remains of a forgotten civilization. It was here that I first sensed something amiss, a subtle shift in the air, a feeling of being watched from unseen eyes. I paused, my senses on high alert as I scanned the clearing for any sign of any movements. The desert seemed eerily still, as if holding its breath in anticipation. A low growl echoed through the canyon, sending a chill down my spine. It was a sound unlike anything I ever heard before, a primal, animalistic sound that seemed to reverberate through every rock beneath my feet. Instinct screamed at me to turn back and retreat to the safety of the trail, but curiosity held me rooted to the spot. A sudden movement caught my eye, a shadow fitting between the boulders at the edge of the clearing. I strained to see through the dappled light, my heart pounding in my chest. There, amidst the rock, stood a figure, a silhouette that seemed to be blent with the surrounding shadows. Its form shifting and indistinct. Fear gripped me as I realized what I was witnessing: a skinwalker, a creature of Navajo legend known for its ability to take any form of animals and human alike. I had heard tales of these beings, warning passed down through generations to those who dare to venture too far into the desert's embrace. The creature moved with an unnatural grace, its movements fluid and predatory. Its eyes gleamed with an otherworldly light, fixed on me with an intensity that made my blood run cold. I fumbled for the small knife tucked into my belt, its reassuring weight a stark reminder of my vulnerability in the face of such a creature. The skinwalker emitted another growl, louder this time, as if challenging my presence in its domain. I stood my ground, my hands trembling slightly as I held the knife in front of me like a talisman against the unknown. Sweat trickled down my spine despite the coolness of the canyon air, my senses overwhelmed by the primal fear that gripped me. Minutes stretched into eternity as we stared each other down, a silent standoff between human and beast. The skinwalker's form shimmered, then flickering between human and animal, a grotesque fusion of both that defied the law of nature. It seemed uncertain whether to approach or retreat, caught in the liminal space between curiosity and caution. I took a step backward, my eyes never leaving the creature before me. The skinwalker's gaze followed my movement, its expression unreadable yet filled with an ancient wisdom that transcended mortal understanding. The tension in the air was palpable, a charged silence that hung between us like a veil. With a final piercing stare, the skinwalker turned and melted back into the shadows from whence it came. Its departure was swift and silent, leaving behind only the echo of its growl and the lingering ascent of desert sage. The clearing seemed to exhale in relief, the oppressive atmosphere dissipating like smoke on the wind. I stood there for a long while, my heart still racing and my mind reeling from the encounter. Eventually, I gathered my wits and retraced my steps back to the main trail, every rustle of the leaves and creak of branches sending fresh waves of apprehension through me. As I emerged from the canyon into the fading light of dusk, I couldn't shake the feeling that I had glimpsed something ancient and malevolent, a creature born of the wilderness itself, a testament to the untamed depth of the world we so often overlook. To this day, I carry the memory of that encounter like a shadow in the corner of my mind, a reminder that there are forces in the world that defy explanation, that lurk just beyond the edges of our understanding, waiting for the unwary to stray too close into their domain. And though I have returned to the desert many times since then, I tread lightly, always mindful of the unseen ices that watches from the shadows and whispered warning that linger in rustling leaves. So, if you ever going anywhere solo, be cautious. You don't know what rustling behind the bushes and watching you behind from a tree or a boulder. So be careful out there. I am here to share something that still give me chills just thinking about it. It happened a few months ago when I was camping with a couple of my friends in the remote woods near my hometown. We were all pretty excited for a weekend away from the city, just some time to unwind and enjoy the nature. Little did we know, we were about to have an experience that none of us would ever forget in our lives. We arrived at the campsite late in the afternoon. The sun was setting behind the trees, casting long shadows that made the forest look even more eerie and terrifying. After setting up our tents and starting a fire, we settled in for the night, roasting marshmallows and sharing ghost stories. I remember one of my friends, we can call him Mike, talking about skinwalkers. He told us that they are shape-shifting witches from Navajo folklore who could take the form of many animals, even other peoples. It sounded ridiculous, but there was something about the way he spoke about them made me feel uneasy. As the fire crackled and the darkness deepened, I started to feel the weight of the woods around us. The trees felt like they were closing in, watching our every movement, and every sound seemed amplified. The wind rustling and the cracking of the twig in a distance. At first, I brushed it off, telling myself it was just an imagination. But around midnight, we decided to call it a night, crawled into our tents, still feeling a little on the edge. Just as I was about to drift off, I heard a strange noise coming from outside, like a low growl, almost like an animal, but not quite. Something about it felt very off. I held my breath, listening very carefully, but it was gone as quickly as it came. I still waited for some time to hear it again, but the noise didn't come back at the night. The next morning, Michael was the first to wake up. He looked pale and shaken. He told us that he had heard footsteps outside his tent in the middle of the night. Heavy footsteps, not like any animal he knew. He thought he had imagined it at first, but when he checked in the morning, he found deep and strange tracks in the mud near our campsites. We all brushed it off as just a deer or something similar, maybe even a bear. But as the day went on, things just got weirder. We went hiking, but I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched all the time. There was this weird quietness in the air, like the animals had all gone silent all of a sudden, and the forest was eerily quiet. That evening, we decided to tell more ghost stories around the fire to scare each other even more than last night. But this time, the atmosphere was different. We could all feel it. The air was thick, and the shadows felt longer than before. Just as Michael was about to tell his stories about skinwalkers, we heard a howl, a long, chilling sound that made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. It wasn't any animal I know. It sounded very different. Suddenly, we saw something moving in the trees just beyond the firelight. It was too tall to be a deer, but it moved like it was talking something. We all frozen in our places, our eyes glued to the darkness and the figure moving around the bushes. That's when I realized it wasn't just the sound or the movement that scared me. It was this feeling of being hunted. After a few tense moments, whatever it was lurking beyond the bushes was disappeared into the darkness. We quickly decided to pack it up for the night and went back to our tents. That night, I barely slept, my heart racing every time I heard a noise outside, even in the distance. The next day, we woke up to find that Michael was missing. At first, we thought he might have gone for a walk or something like that. But hours passed, and there was no sign of him. We searched everywhere, calling his name, wandering around the forest like madmen. But the forest seemed to swallow our voices. Finally, as panic set in, we stumbled upon his tent. It was eerily undisturbed, but there was a single footprint outside, huge and unnatural, like a mix between a human and something animalistic. At that moment, we all realized we were in deep trouble. It was no longer just a camping trip. We felt like something was actively hunting us. A large predator hunting for its prey. We spent that day looking for Michael, but as night fell again, the atmosphere grew even heavier. We decided to return to the campsite, hoping Jake would somehow find his way back. As we sat around the fire, we couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. The shadows seemed to moving closer than before. Then one of my friends, Sam, whispered that she had been seeing something at the edge of the woods. We all turned suddenly, and sure enough, there was a figure, tall and dark, just standing there, behind the tree lines and watching us. I couldn't see it clearly, but it felt wrong, like it was almost human, but not quite there. It moved with an unnatural grace, blending in with the trees. We were frozen in fear. Then, as if it knew we were watching, it let out a low growl. That sound sent us scrambling for our tents. I sipped mine and held my breath inside my tent, praying it would leave us alone. I don't know how many hours I spent there, and I could hear my friends whispering in the dark. I was too scared to sleep, so I just lay there, staring at my tent. That's when I heard it again, the footsteps, but this time they were closer, circling our campsite. Suddenly, the growl came again, and it was right outside my tent. I felt like my heart pounding in my chest as I waited for something to happen. I knew I couldn't stay there anymore. I had to get out from there. I quietly unzipped my tent, peering out into the unsinking darkness. The fire was barely glowing, and I could see the outline of the trees. That's when I saw it. Two glowing eyes staring back at me from the darkness. I quickly ducked back inside, my mind racing. I need to wake my friends. But what would we do? There was no cell service, no way to call for help. But then I heard a scream. It was Sam. I bolted out of my tent, and my heart sank. She was standing there, pointing into the woods, her face pale with terror and fear. Michael, she shouted, he's out there. We all gathered around her, and she described seeing him. He was running through the trees, but something was chasing him. We couldn't see what it was, but the sound of heavy footsteps filled the air. We had to help him. We grabbed the flashlight and cautiously moved into the woods, calling his name. The darkness felt alive, the trees whispering secrets we didn't want to hear. As we walked deeper, the atmosphere grew heavier, and the feeling of being watched intensified. It was like the forest was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. Then we heard it, a rustling sound just ahead. We froze in our places, the flashlight illuminating the trees in front of us. There, just beyond the light, we saw a figure. It was tall and thin, with long limbs that looked almost broken. It stood there, watching us, its face hidden in the shadows. I felt a wave of dread washing over me. Run! I yelled suddenly, and we all turned and sprinted back to the campsite, our heart racing. We reached the campsite, panting and terrified, but as we huddled together, we realized Michael was still missing. We couldn't leave him. We took a moment to catch our breath, but that's when we heard a new sound, a deep, distorted voice echoing through the trees. It was calling out to us. It sounded like Mike, but not real. It sounded more like someone mimicking Michael's voice. Help me, it said, but it didn't sound like him. It sounded very wrong, more like twisted. We looked at each other in horror, realizing what we were dealing with. It was trying to lure us in, to make us vulnerable. We had to make a choice, stay and wait for Michael, or leave before it was too late. But deep down, we knew we couldn't just abandon him. Just then, we heard a crash in the woods. It sounded like something was charging toward us. We scrambled to grab our gear, adrenaline pumping through our veins. That's when I saw it again. The figure from earlier, standing at the edge of the campsite. It was moving closer, and this time I could see its face. It was human, but not quite. Its skin was stretched tight over its bones, its eyes wide and empty, it's like hollow pits. Michael, I shouted, but I knew it wasn't him, even though it looked like Michael. We ran from there, leaving everything behind, diving into the woods. The sound of footsteps echoed behind us, and we didn't stop until we reached the main road. We flagged down a passing car, our hearts racing. The driver looked terrified as we piled in, breathless and shaking at the same time. We told him everything, but honestly, I don't think he believed any word we said. We just want to get away from the place. As we drove away, I glanced back at the dark woods. I saw those glowing eyes watching us from the shadows. To this day, I still think about Michael. We reported him missing, but he was never found. The woods swallowed him, and I can shake this feeling that whatever we encountered that night is still out there, waiting. So, if you ever go camping in the woods, remember this. There are some things that don't want to be found. Hey everyone, my name is Jacob. I am not usually one to believe in creepy stuff, but something happened to me recently that I cannot explain. It's changed my beliefs. Let me tell you about it. I am an accountant, so my days are usually spent crunching numbers in an office corner. Last weekend, I decided I need a break from the city grind. I packed up my tent and some food and headed out to a remote forest for a solo camping few miles from my home. The woods were dense and quiet, with only the rustling of leaves beneath my foot and the occasional bird songs that breaking the silence in the forest. The day one was pretty good. I hiked for a few miles and came back to my camp, prepared some food over the campfire. I said. The first day passed very quietly and peacefully. But on the second night of my trip, things took a dark turn. I had just finished dinner and was sitting by the fire, enjoying the crackling warmth, when I heard a strange noise. It was like a mixture between growl and a whisper, coming from somewhere deeper into the woods. At first, I brushed it off. I thought maybe some animals searching for food or something like that. And I was deeper in the woods, so the occasional sounds are quite natural. But then I heard it again, closer this time. I grabbed my flashlight from my backpack and cautiously walked towards where I thought the sound was coming before. The tree seemed to close in around me, casting an eerie shadow in the moonlight. That's when I saw it. A figure, tall and immaculate, standing among the trees. Its eyes gleamed in the darkness, reflecting the light from the flashlight. My heart raced as I tried to make sense of what I was seeing before me, what was standing there, and what I was witnessing. I froze, unsure of what to do. The figure didn't move, just stared at me with those glowing eyes. Suddenly, it let out a bone chilling scream that echoed through the entire forest. It sounded inhuman, like a mixture of agony and rage. I stumbled backwards, tripping over a tree root and falling to the ground, face first. As I scrambled to get back on my feet, I heard the figure crashing through the underbrush towards me. Panic set in as I ran blindly through the forest, branches whipping against my face and thorns tearing at my clothes. I could hear it behind me, its heavy footsteps getting closer with each passing second. It's gaining on me. I ran. I ran like I did never before in my life. I didn't know how long I ran, but eventually I burst into a small clearing and collapsed on the ground, gasping for breath. The forest was silent again, and the only sound was my ragged breathing. I waited, terrified that the figure would find me again, but the minutes passed with no sign of it. I looked around the forest, fear gripping over my heart. Eventually, I gathered enough courage to slowly make my way back to my campsite. I packed up my things as quickly as I could when I reached there and frantically sprinted back to my car. The drive home was a blur. My mind racing what I had seen. Since that day, I haven't been able to shake the feeling that something supernatural happened out there in the woods. I have read about legends of Wendigo, creature from a folklore said to be cursed humans driven mad by greed or hunger. I never believed in such things before, but now I'm not so sure. I don't know what I encountered that night, and I am not sure I ever will. All I know is that I have become a believer in the unknown, and I will never forget the terror I felt in those woods. So, guys, if you ever going for a camping or hiking, whether you are a believer or not, be careful out there. You will never know what lurking in those dark shadows. Hey folks, John here. I have a wild experience that happened to me to share here. It was few years back. I love to go camping and solo hiking. I used to go whenever I get free time, and this happened on such a camping few years ago. I have always been a skeptic when it comes to creepy ghost stories and other folklores. But after what happened that night, I can deny the existence of things beyond our understanding. Let me share my experience. As a painter, I often find inspiration in the nature. So I decided to go camping and hiking often. I decided to take a painting trip to a secluded forest. The air was crisp, the trees towering overhead, and I felt a sense of peace as I set up my easel and started to work. It was on the third night of my stay that things got strange. I had just finished a painting of a serene lake when I heard a noise that made my blood run cold. It was a low, menacing growl, unlike any animal sound I ever heard before. I peered into the darkness, trying to make sense of it, but the forest remained completely still. Shrugging it off as my imagination, I packed up my gear and started to head back to my campsite. That's when I heard it again, closer this time. It sent shivers down my spine, and I instinctively reached for my flashlight clipped on my belt. As I scanned the trees, I got a glimpse of movement along the trees. A tall, gowned figure standing among the shadows, its eyes glowing with an unnatural light, and I felt a chill through my bones. And I realized it was staring at me. Fear gripped me as I stumbled backwards, my heart pounding in my chest. The figure let out a haunting wail that seemed to echo all around the and filling me with dread. Without thinking, I turned and ran as fast as I can. As I sprinted through the underbrush, I could hear the figure crashing through the trees behind me, its footsteps gaining on me with each second. Panic set in as I pushed myself harder and harder, desperate to escape whatever horror was pursuing me. Finally, minutes, maybe half an hour of running, I bursted into a small patched area and lay down on the ground, breathing heavily. The forest fell silent again around me, and I strained to listen for any signs of the creature, but there was nothing, just me and the silent forest. Slowly, and casually I gathered my courage and made my way back. When I reached the campsite, it was all wreck. Something has gone through the campsite, destroying my stuffs. Without wasting any time, I packed up my belongings in a frenzy, not daring to look back into the darkness. Every rustle of leaves and snap of twigs made me jump along the way, convinced that the creature was still out there, watching and waiting for me. I drove home in a daze, my mind racing with questions. What had I seen in those woods? Could it be in a Wendigo, as some of the locals whispered about? I had always dismissed such stories as a folklore, but now I couldn't deny the possibility. Since that night, I haven't been able to shake the feeling that something supernatural crossed my path. I have been reading about Wendigos, cursed beings lurking in the wilderness. I never believed in such tales, but now I can help but wonder. Whatever it was that I encountered in those woods, it has changed me. I am no longer the skeptic once was. I now know that there are things in the woods that defy explanation, and I will never forget the terror I felt that night in the forest. Hope you guys like the stories. If you enjoy them, please consider subscribing to the channel. Check out my other videos, share them, and like them. And if you have any suggestions, any improvements I need to make in this channel and my videos, post them in the comment section too. Press the bell icon and support me. So, till next time, it's Malayali Wendigo. Bye. I have been thinking about posting this for a while now, but every time I get close to doing it, I hesitate. I guess it's just that. Even now, I have hard time believing what happened. I have read about similar encounters, but nothing really prepared me for the terror I felt that night. I'm not usually one to get spooked by stories or mythical tales. I have always been more of a skeptic, but what I experienced was beyond anything I could have imagined. I hope sharing this helped me come to terms with it, and maybe, just maybe, someone out there has experienced something similar to mine. It all started about a year ago. I had taken a week off from work and decided to spend some time camping in the woods near my hometown. It's a pretty remote area with thick trees and barely any trails. It's the kind of place where you can be completely alone if you want to be. I like that anyway. It's peaceful and away from the constant hum of daily life. One day, I packed up my gear, loaded up my truck, and drove out to my usual spot. I set up a camp in a small clearing surrounded by a dense forest. As evening approached, I built a fire and settled with a book to read for the night, planning to enjoy a quiet night under the stars and the moon. Time passes by. Around midnight, I was dozing off by the fire when I heard something that made my heart skip a beat. It was a sound I couldn't place, like a soft thud, followed by a heavy, dragging noise. At first, I thought it was just some animal or maybe the wind, but it was eerily consistent, like footsteps coming closer and closer. I stood up and scanned the darkness. The firelight barely reached beyond a few feet, and beyond that was just inky blackness. You could see nothing out there, even if someone hiding behind the trees. The dragging noises grew louder, and my gut told me it wasn't just a normal animal. The sound wasn't quite right. It was too deliberate and too heavy for some small animal. I grabbed a flashlight and shone into the woods, to the direction where the sound was coming from. But all I could see was the dense forest and shadows playing tricks on my eyes. The noises stopped abruptly, and for a few more seconds, there was just silence. I tried to brush it off, but the feeling of being watched wouldn't leave me. I decided to investigate. I grabbed my machete just in case and ventured into the woods in the darkness that swallowed the entire forest. The woods was quiet now, but I could still hear the faint rustling noises, like something or someone moving just out of my sight. As I moved deeper, the rustling grew more pronounced. I stopped and listened carefully. That's when I saw it. Just beyond the edge of my flashlight's beam, in the dim light, I caught a glimpse of something moving between the tree lines. It was too big to be a deer or even a bear, and the movement was too strange too. It was almost like it was moving on its two behind legs, or hunched over, making it look awkward and unnatural. I squinted my eyes, trying to get a better look in the darkness. That's when I saw it. Its eyes, they were glowing, reflecting the light of my flashlight. They were not like animal eyes. They were more like a pair of eerie, yellowish orbs staring right back at me. My blood ran cold through my entire body. I froze in terror, unsure of what to do. The creature's eyes seemed to follow me as I slowly backed away from the tree lines. Suddenly, suddenly, it let out a low, guttural growl that made my skin peel off. I turned. I ran back towards the camp, my heart racing in my chest, the sound of heavy footsteps pursuing me and getting closer with each step. When I reached the clearing, I fumbled with my flashlight and managed to shine it in the direction of the noises. What I saw made my breath catch in my throat. The creature was almost fully revealed in the moonlight now. It was enormous, standing on the two legs with a muscular build covered in dark, shaggy fur. Its head was like a wolf, but much larger, and its eyes, they were those same haunting orbs. The face was a grotesque blend of canine and human features, with a snout that seemed to curl into a wicked grin, looking at me. I grabbed my phone and tried to take a picture, but my hand was shaking too badly. In a panic, I reached for the fire poker, trying to look intimidating and make as much noise as possible. The creature paused at the edge of the flashlight, still watching me with those glowing eyes. It seemed to be assessing me, like it was calculating whether or not to approach. The face-off continued for a while, and sometimes after Suddenly the creature turned and ran back into the forest, its footsteps fading in the dark forest, and I can still hear its howl in a far distance. I stood there, frozen in fear and terror. I don't know how long I stood there, maybe half an hour. The rest of the night was a blur of terror. I stood by the fire, stoking it to keep it bright and hoping it would deter the creature. Every little sound made me jump, and every crackle of the fire seemed deafening. I didn't dare move from my spot, not even back to my tent or check my surroundings. As dawn approached, the noises and the creature's presence gradually faded. I waited until the first light of morning before I dared to leave the safety of the fire. When I finally did, I found evidence of its presence: deep, heavy tracks in the ground around my camp, and broken branches where it had pushed through the underbrush. I can see its footprints in the mud. It was much larger than any other animal I have ever seen. I packed up quickly as I could and left the woods, my mind racing with what I had seen. I haven't been back to that spot since, and I don't have plan to. I don't know what the creature was, but it was like anything I ever seen before. It wasn't a bear or a known animal. It was something far more sinister. I have read about similar encounters with a creature called the Dogman, or something similar, and it seems like what I saw fit the description. I don't know if it was the same creature or just something that happened to be similar like that, but I know that I have experienced something real and terrifying. Stay safe out there. Sometimes what we think we know about the woods might be just the tip of the iceberg. It's much darker than we thought. It's much darker than we thought. I never believed in the supernatural, not until that night I had my first real encounter with something that I couldn't explain. I had always thought those stories were just tall tales, something to tell around a campfire to give you chills before you drift off to sleep. But that night, everything changed. I grew up on a small farm in the northern part of New Mexico, not far from the edge of Navajo land. My family had lived there for generations, working in the land and living off what we could grow, hunt, and trade. There was always a sense of isolation, but it wasn't something I minded. I was used to it. My friends were mostly the people I met at school or the occasional visitor who could stop by when they're traveling through on the nearby highway. It wasn't uncommon to hear strange noises outside in the dead of the night: wolves howling, coyotes yelping, maybe even the distant crackling of thunder on a dry evening. I always felt safe, though, surrounded by familiar mountains and the constant hum of the desert wind. That was until my encounter with something I could never explain. It started on one evening in the late fall. The sun had already dipped behind the hills, casting long shadows across the land. I was out in the barn, finishing up the chores, when I heard a noise, a soft shuffle of footsteps, It was strange. No one was supposed to be out there. My father had gone into the town for supplies, and my mother was inside the house preparing dinner, and I was alone. At first, I thought it might be a neighbor's dog or perhaps even a coyote, but then I heard it again, a slow, deliberate footstep, almost as if someone was trying to be stealthy. I froze, my heart racing, the hairs on the back of my neck stood up. I decided to step out of the barn and take a look. The night was still, and the only sound the distant rustling of dry leaves and the faint hum of the wind. I called out, thinking it might be my father who had came back from early. Dad, I yelled, my voice sounding too small in the vast emptiness. I stepped further into the yard, my boots crunching on the gravel. The moonlight cast a dim glow across the land, and that's when I saw it. At the edge of the yard, standing in the shadow of the large cottonwood tree, was a figure. At first, I thought it might be a person, a man maybe, but something about the way it stood felt wrong. It wasn't just the height, it was how it twisted unnaturally. Its limbs almost too long, too thin. I squinted my eyes, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. The figure didn't move. I should have turned and run back to the house, but I didn't. I couldn't. My feet felt like they were glued to the ground. The figure stepped forward, slowly, its movements jerky and uneven, like it was still figuring out how to walk. But it wasn't walking on two legs, it was shifting, crouching, almost like it was crawling forward on all fours, but standing up straight for a moment, then crouching again. I could see its eyes glint in the moonlight, dark, almost black, and completely hollow. I know what you are thinking. It could be someone in a costume, some prankster, maybe, but it wasn't. I have seen enough people and animal to know the difference. And this thing, it wasn't human. I finally snapped out and ran back towards the barn. I don't know how I made it back inside, but when I slammed the door shut, I knew something had followed me. I could hear it, the sound of something moving around the barn, skittering and scratching at the wooden door. I spent the night in the barn, closing all doors and windows. But I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. I spent hours sitting in the corner of the barn, listening to the rustling outside, waiting for dawn. And when the sun finally came, I thought I might have imagined it. Maybe the stress of working late, the isolation, the lack of sleep had got to me. Then I went outside the barn. That's when I saw the tracks. I found the marks on the ground, large, flawed footprints, half human, half animal like, leading up to the barn and then disappearing into the desert beyond. They were too strange, to from any animal I knew, and they were too big to belong to a person. I knew then I wasn't imagining things. Something was out there, and it wasn't done with me yet. The next few days were a blur. I couldn't stop thinking about what I had seen before. My mind raced constantly, replaying the encounter over and over again in my mind, trying to make sense of it. But every time I tried to rationalize what happened, the memory of those hollow eyes and that natural jerky movement kept coming back to me. My father had returned late that morning. I told him about the strange footprints. He wasn't as concerned as I thought he should be. He explained sometimes wild animals like mountain lion, wolves, even birds could leave strange tracks, especially in the areas where the ground was soft. But those tracks weren't like anything I had ever seen before. I knew he was trying to calm me down, to reassure that it was probably just some animal. But something in his eyes told me that he knew what it was. That night, as the sun set and the air grew colder, I felt a growing unease. I knew I had to stay alert, whatever it was, whatever had been lurking near the barn. I couldn't just ignore it. I stayed inside that evening, and my father kept the light on, more as comfort than for any practical reason. But despite all our precautions, something felt off. Around midnight, I heard the unmistakable scratching, the kind of sound that made my blood run cold. It was soft at first, like the tap of a claw against the wood, but it grew louder and more intense as the minutes ticked by. I tried to ignore it at first, thinking it might just be a stray dog or a raccoon this time, but deep down I knew that wasn't it. I grabbed a flashlight and a hunting rifle from the closet, unsure of what exactly I was preparing for. My fingers trembled as I checked the chamber, and I moved carefully to the back door. The scratching stopped when I reached there, but the silence that followed was even worse. It was thick, oppressive, as if the very air around the house was holding its breath. I called out into the night, my voice shaking. "Who's out there?" There was no answer, just the wind rustling in the trees. The faint rustle of the dry leaf shifting across the ground. But then I heard something else, a low guttural sound, a mix between a growl and something else, something I couldn't quietly identify. It came from the direction of the barn, deep and rumbled, like something was talking in the dark. The flashlight trembled in my hand as I pointed towards the barn. For a moment, I thought I saw movement, something fast, darting between the shadows. I couldn't make out what it was, but I knew it wasn't a deer or any animal I had seen around the property. I didn't wait to see more. I bolted inside, locking the door behind me. My heart hammered in my chest. I could hear it, whatever it was, moving just outside. The sound of claws scraping along the wooden walls, a faint shuffle of footsteps, and the distant screech of something or someone in pain. I lay there sleepless for hours, and I didn't know When did I fall asleep? The next morning, I kept thinking about those sounds, about the creature outside, about what it wanted. My father noticed my unease, but didn't say anything. The next morning, I kept thinking about those sounds, about the creature outside, about what it wanted. My father noticed my unease, but didn't say anything. He went about his work on the farm, the way he always did. I followed him for a while, but it was hard to focus. My mind kept drifting back to the night before, to the thing that was out there. I spent the day pacing around the house, watching the barn, hoping for some sign that whatever it was had long gone, but it didn't. By the time evening came, I had decided to confront it. I wasn't sure what I was hoping for. Maybe I thought I could scare it off or something. Maybe I just need to know for certain that it wasn't all in my head. I grabbed the rifle again and walked out the barn. The air had the oppressive stillness to it, and the sun was sinking behind the mountains. The long shadows stretched across the yard, and the night felt like it was closing in around me. I could feel my pulse pounding in my throat as I neared the barn. The door was ajar, and there was a smell in the air, something recent and rotten. I stepped inside cautiously, scanning the dim interior. The light from the flashlight danced across the walls, illuminating the hay bales and the old farming tool. The place was still, silent, but it felt wrong. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up, and the silence was suffocating too. That's when I heard it. A soft sound, like claws scraping against the wood. My heart stopped. I turned, my flashlight flickering nervously across the dim interior of the barn. There, in the far corner, a dark shape shifted. At first, it seemed to be just another pile of hay or a shadow from the roof beams. But then it moved again. The creature rose from the shadows. It wasn't quite a man, but it wasn't quite an animal either. Its movements were jerky, disjointed, like something trying to learn how to walk. Its limbs were unnaturally long, almost too thin for its body, and bent at strange angles. The skin that stretched over its form was pale and stretched tight, like leather over bones, almost sickly in its appearance. And its face, if you could even call that, was horrific mess of features, hollow eyes, void of darkness that seemed to absorb the light from my flashlight. Its mouth was stretched wide, unnaturally so, like it was grinning. But there was nothing remotely human about that grin, just a sharp, jagged teeth and the faintest hint of something dripping from its lip. I froze, unable to tear my gaze away from it. My breath caught in my throat. I thought about running. I thought about screaming, but I was rooted to the spot. The thing tilted its head, its eyes, those horrible empty eyes, locked on me. The sound of its breath was wet, labored rasp, like something gurgling with blood. And then it spoke. The voice that came from it wasn't human. It was guttural, distorted, like the sound of something trying to mimic language but failing terribly. You shouldn't have come here, it said, the words slithering out of its mouth in a low rasp. I couldn't speak, I couldn't move. All I could do was watch as it stepped closer, its body moving with a strange, horrifying grace, despite its grotesque form. I could smell it now, a pungent, sticky stench like rotting meat and decay. Before I could react, the creature lunged at me, fast as a whip. Its clawed hand reached for me. I instinctively raised the rifle, my hand shaking, but I wasn't fast enough. The thing slammed into me, knocking the air off my lungs, sending me sprawling to the ground. My head hit the cold, dirt floor of the barn with a sickening thud. The rifle flew from my hand, scattering across the barn door. The creature startled me, his cold, clammy hands pressing against my chest as it started down at me, grinning like a predator savoring the final moments of its prey. Its breath was hot on my face, rancid and heavy, and I fought to free myself. My legs kicked out, my feet flailing, but it didn't even flinch. The grip on my chest tightened, suffocating me. In the back of my mind, a thought dragged out clearly. This is it. This is how I die. But then something strange happened. The creature stopped. It hesitated, its hollow eyes flickering toward the barn door, toward the pale silver of the moonlight just outside. And then it made a sound, a low, shrill whistle, like the wind blowing through an empty bottle. The creature froze again, and its head twisting in an unnatural angle to listen. It growled under its breath, a low sound of frustration. In a blink, it released its hold on me and backed away, its body shuddering as if caught in some internal conflict. The thing didn't take its eyes off me as it slowly retreated back into the shadows, moving in a jerky, disjointed steps. There was still, the barn silent once again. I didn't move, I just lay there, trying to process what had just happened, trying to make sense of it all. My heart was pounding so hard, I thought it might burst out from my chest. I could feel the sweat slicking my palms, my face. I was shaking uncontrollably. The creature paused at the edge of the barn, turning to look back at me. One last time. It opened its mouth wide, the grin stretched even further. The last thing I saw was its glowing, hollow eyes, the endless darkness within them, before it disappeared into the night. The silence that follows was deafening. I didn't wait, I didn't think. I scrambled to my feet, grabbed my rifle, and bolted out the barn. My legs were shaky, but I forced myself to run, to get as far away from the thing as possible. I ran toward the house, not caring about the noises or exhaustion in my limbs. My mind was set on one goal: escape from there. I made it inside, locking the door behind me. I didn't stop to breathe. I didn't stop to think. I pressed my back against the door, plunging the rifle in my hand, watching the window like a hawk, expecting the creature to come back at any moment. The hours dragged on, but nothing came. The house was quiet, like before, save for the sound of the rapid breathing. I don't know how long I sat there, terrified that something was going to happen, that it wasn't over, that feeling that it was still out there, waiting, looking at me. But the night passed without any incident. I didn't sleep at all that night. I sat there, wide-eyed, until dawn finally broke over the horizon, bringing with a fleeting sense of relief. The next morning, I told my father about everything. I didn't care if he believed me or not. The creature in that barn, it wasn't just some figment of my imagination. I had seen it, felt it, and now I know the truth. My father's face paled when I described it, and for the first time I saw something like fear in his eyes. He didn't say much. He didn't need to. We left the farm that day. My father packed our things in silence. He didn't argue when I said that we couldn't stay there anymore. He knew, just like I did, that something was haunting us, something that shouldn't be. I never spoke about it again, not to anyone. No one would have believed me, not really. But I will never forget what I saw that night. I think it was a skinwalker. The thing that wore the face of a man, but wasn't one. The thing that stalks the dark corners of this world, waiting for the right moment to strike. I have learned one thing from all of this. There are forces in this world far beyond our understanding. Some things are better left unexplored. So if you ever near the desert of New Mexico and you hear something strange on the wind, something that sounds like footsteps, but not quite like footsteps, don't go looking for it. Don't try to see what it is. It might just be waiting for you too. Hope you guys like this video. If you did, please consider subscribing to this channel. Enable the bell icon so you don't miss new uploads. And also check out other videos in this channel too. Like them and share them. And if you have any suggestions or any improvements I need to make in this channel, please post them in the comment section. Till next time, this is Malayali Wendigo. Bye.